I'm Christina, Marketing Executive at Commusoft. Here, we're all about educating and empowering field service businesses to create remarkable customer experiences. How do we do this? We'd like to highlight a series of forward-thinking leaders in the industry and get them to dish out their best tips, all supported by the best of evidence, their continuous success. Today, we have Danielle Putnam with us from the new Flat Rate. She's an expert in pricing, and she's going to tell you all about how to set the right prices in order to make a profit. So it's not just about survival, it's about thriving. Let's get started. A business owner, a business coach, tell us a little bit more about your story, Danielle.
Oh, well, thank you. I love that question, Christina. My story, as well as so many of your listeners, I'm sure our stories are evolving, right? When I was young and in high school, I thought, I'm going to be this really important executive by the time I'm 20, and I'm going to have all these businesses because I thought it was going to be so easy. And of course, I had to learn that business takes time, and it's a lifelong pursuit to be an entrepreneur. So today, I am just thrilled to be the president of the new Flat Rate. I am the immediate past, well, not really immediate, but I am one of the past presidents for an association called Women in HVACR. So I kind of have been born and bred in the service industry. My dad was a contractor. His dad was a contractor. All my brothers are contractors. And I really grew up around the trades, heating and air conditioning, electrical, plumbing, service providers. And so with the new Flat Rate, we're reaching out into those verticals and also chimney and pest control and indoor air quality. But I got to where I am today because of great people in my life. Of course, I couldn't do it by myself. I'd asked for a lot of help, read a lot of books, but just time. Knowing that I wanted to be in business, I loved business and I loved contractors and the service industry, and I wanted to help. I've just spent time in a lifelong pursuit to kind of learn the business, if that makes sense.
So, Danielle, before we dive into more specific questions, I'd be really curious, and I think it's on everyone's mind when they meet someone who is running a business. How has the pandemic changed the way you run things? Has it made you change your strategies or at least your outlook on things? How did it affect you?
At first, I think everybody, not just me, but every business owner, everybody was a little fearful. What's going to happen? What's the future look like? Are we going to go out of business? Are we going to stay in business? What do we do? What about my team? What about my employees? And so for us, we just had to determine that we weren't going to stop. No matter what, okay, things might be a little difficult. They might be a little bit different. We're going to be flexible and we're not going to stop. And so I believe for a business owner, you just have to decide that there's no turning back at some point. And so for us, we didn't change a lot of strategies. I wish I could sit here and say we implemented X, Y, and Z, and we changed this. Really, it was more of a mindset determining that we still had customers to serve, and we weren't going to stop. We were going to make sure to continue to support and serve our customers no matter what. So we did. And of course, for a little while, us and like so many businesses, we did have to work. Fortunately, we were able to. We did work remote only for about 30 days. And then we came back into the office, and we implemented something called CertiClear. And CertiClear is a cool little software program where you get a text message every day to check your health. How are you feeling? Have you been around anybody with COVID? Do you have a fever? Any sniffles? And so you kind of get assessed, and then they say, okay, yes, you're approved for work. And by using things like that, a little simple tool, it made everybody in the office feel more comfortable that, okay, my coworkers are safe and healthy today. And so they felt better being in the office. And of course, we kept our distance and kept things clean like everybody did. But ultimately, it was more of just a mindset that we're not going to turn back. We're going to do everything that we can to keep pushing forward to serve our customers. So we kind of just maintained, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. I love the sound of that, Danielle. And I love the fact that you found this software you mentioned. Sometimes it is just a matter of finding the right tools at the right time. And it's not something we might have thought about in the past. It's like, will I ever need a software to check on me in the morning? No, that's not going to happen. Exactly. But then it did happen. And the fact that you are, ready to go, ready to bring change into your business and accept what's happening, deal with it, move on and adapt. And I think that's the That's the kind of mindset we try to have ourselves and also to transmit to our listeners and our watchers on YouTube. It's so important to always stay flexible because that way,
Yes.
exactly, you're ready for any kind of challenge. And I also love the fact you mentioned you focused on your customers. At the end of the day, it is a duty. Anyone who is a business owner or a business manager or working for any sort of business that serves a customer, and we all do, don't we? It's so important to prioritize them because whatever you're feeling, they're feeling also. So,
Right.
moving on from that, have you had any sort of success stories or did any business owners stand out to you in 2021 as dealing with this kind of situation very well? What do you think, Danielle?
I do know of a couple. Great question. And one of our contracting business owners in Michigan found a new way to create face masks using old filters, and they provided those to their teams before anybody else did. I feel like they were really first, and they started making these specialty filter face masks and giving them to their customers and everybody in the community. So they were really first to respond. This was last year. But this year, I just heard a story of somebody with a company called IC Web Group, and her name is Jennifer. She's the business owner. And during all this pandemic, when her team, her employees were feeling a little bit insecure and nervous, she stopped one day and she says, "Hey, you know what, guys, here." And she handed them all some money. She said, "Go buy groceries, get everything that you need, take it home, stock your fridge, make sure that you feel comfortable for your families, and then come back to work because we have stuff to do and we have to serve our customers." And I felt like that was such a great leadership response that she did. And so often as business owners and leaders, we're so busy thinking about our company that we often forget, although we don't want to forget, but it's easy to forget, wait a minute, how is the pulse of my team members? How do my employees feel right now? Let me stop and address them and make sure that they feel very secure so we can move forward from a position of strength and not weakness, right? And I love how she responded. It was just a great example of an excellent leader saying, "Hey, here's some money. I'm not worried about my business first. I'm worried about my people first. Take this money, buy groceries, make sure that your families are fine, safe, secure, taken care of, and then come back to work."
Flexibility. Again, being able to demonstrate a novel way of thinking, a novel way of doing things, and being able to understand that happy employees are productive employees. And especially, I'm sure, obviously you've been in the business for some time, and then you've interacted all with field service businesses your whole life from what you've mentioned. Whenever a technician goes out in the field, they interact with customers, and that kind of mentality, the customer will notice if they're dealing with someone who is feeling anxious, who is feeling insecure, who's not feeling very confident in themselves that day. This is one of those small things that really contributes to the customer experience. And
Yes.
another thing that I know you like to talk about, and I definitely think it works into that flexibility mentality that you mentioned, is the fact that a lot of people set their prices. We're going to start talking about prices. This is why we're here today. This is why you're here, Daniel, because you're an expert on pricing, and it works into that flexibility aspect in the sense that a lot of people set their prices both before the pandemic and after the pandemic, because I'm sure we're gonna get around to talking a little bit about that. It's something that it's set in stone. A lot of people figure out a price for themselves. Some of them take into account their competition. Some of them take into account their overheads, the number of employees, etc. Each of them has a way of doing it. But we don't always think about, okay, it's time to change these prices, because oftentimes people fear that customers are going to feel alienated if something gets more expensive, even though it's normal. It's normal for things to get more expensive. So what I've seen around the internet and what I've seen a lot of our Commusoft customers do is that they try to offer a good, better, best approach. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about what this is, if you think it's a good way of going about pricing. How do you feel about this strategy?
A long time ago, it used to just be time and material. And so for any service provider, they would kind of take an estimate of how long it was going to take them to do the repair and what materials it was going to take. And then they tell the customer it'll take about this long and about this kind of material, and this, should be our price. And then we moved to a model called flat rate pricing, which was good for a while, but what it did is it forced the representative of the company, the technician or the service provider, to look for more ways to add on and increase the average service ticket. And so the business owner, for example, would say, okay, now I have flat rate pricing. Here's all the prices for our services, but it's not enough. So Mr. Technician or Mr. Service Provider, find ways to upsell, find ways to get the customer to buy more. And then as an industry, we began to try to create our service providers and technicians and our tradesmen. We tried to create and turn them into salespeople, getting them to pressure the customer to buy more, to get more money from every opportunity. And it created resistance. And then, of course, we also turned our customers into shoppers by doing that. They're like, well, I don't want to feel backed into a corner. I'm not going to use that company again. I'm going to look around and find a different company. So with this, as you say, this good, better, best model, all of a sudden the customer has choices. They're not backed into a corner, and they're able to choose the level of service that they want. That's why it's such a brilliant model. Now, our company at the new flat rate, we have 5 price points. So it's not just good, better, best. We go up to 5 different price points. So whether you use 3 or whether you use 5 prices, the secret sauce is to make sure that you're always offering your customers options so that they don't feel the sales pressure. They're able to make an informed decision and choose the level of service that they want. And what we have found, Christina, we've used third parties, we've done all sorts of surveys, and we have tons of data proving that when positioned correctly and when you show options, 80% of your customers will buy more and choose an option higher than the bottom price. Well, what that does is it puts more money in the business, right? And so the customer's paying more, but it's also providing an opportunity for the technician or service provider to take their time, do a great job, use better materials, parts, tools to be able to really service and provide more value because there's more money opportunity on that call. And then the owner doesn't have to pressure to say, bring back more money because it takes a lot of money to run a business, right? So it's a beautiful model. It is I can't talk enough about it. It's the way that we strongly believe all businesses should be priced is by giving options because the customer wants to be able to choose the service that they want. Does that make sense?
Exactly, and feel in control. At the end of the day, that's what the customer is going to appreciate most. And first and foremost, that's the new flatrate.com. There's going to be the link in the description box. Make sure to check it out. You're going to find a lot more detail, and you're going to see Danielle's pricing in action. So this is not just anecdotal evidence. Danielle is actually using that strategy. So, if you look at Commusoft's pricing as well, you're going to see it is a tiered system. And if you look around to pretty much any other successful business, if you think about it, in any other kind of industry, everyone offers tiered pricing because, like you said, Danielle, it puts the customer in control. And it definitely gives results because you have people who are always going to go for the budget option, and that's totally fine. That's the thing. They don't have to feel pressured, like you said, into becoming shoppers and always feeling anxious. Oh goodness, I don't want that person in my house again because they're just going to sell me on something. But then you also have people who always want the premium version of things. They're going to go for the top version. They're going to get top of the line appliances. And that's an opportunity for you to make more money without losing the budget customer. And that's excellent.
Right. And you make a good point right there, Christina, that you are going to have those top premium buying customers. And as service providers in human DNA, it's really hard not to project ourselves and our own budget circumstances on our customers. And so we have to train that, we don't know their budget. And so we can't sit here and say, oh, they can't afford that, or, oh, they can afford this, right? You have to give the options and let the customer set their own budget. Let them do that, telling you what they want to spend, because some people are always premium buyers in everything, not just cars or shoes, right? And how they take care of their home and all the different things, that they care about. So, you just can't prejudge.
Exactly. And this is also, it is a mindset change, And I was wondering if you've seen any businesses go through this change. How was the process? How did they realize, there's a better way of setting my prices? It doesn't always have to be according to competition or according to what's costing me. Do you have any sort of examples of people who've implemented this strategy?
It can be really scary for companies to change their pricing model because of the unknowns and the fear of, well, what if my employees don't like the new pricing model? What if they push back and give me resistance? Or what if my customers don't like the pricing model? But we've found that when people embrace, hey, it's time to change, I'm going to move forward, they're always pleasantly surprised, and they'll come back and say, oh, my customers didn't give me any resistance. They really liked it. Oh, my technicians, they're doing great. Because they're selling more opportunities, all of a sudden, my technicians are making more money because a lot of them are on performance pay. And so like you've been saying, the mindset change, we often, especially as business owners, we get in our own way. We create our own objections, and we have to get past that mental block and embrace change and move forward and look at all the successful companies and listen to the testimonies of people that have already made the change and that it's working for them. And so surely it'll work for you too. So they're definitely, I've seen a lot of companies struggle with the transition because they've been scared. But with anything like that, we encourage training and coaching and hand-holding. Get some help. Don't do it alone. And then the process can be really smooth.
Yep. Get the experts. Exactly. And I think this harkens back to a conversation that we had in a previous episode of Let's Talk. I'm just going to link it up above. We had a chat with Ruth King, who was also a financial expert who worked a lot with companies who might have lost their way along the as they grew. They sort of lost control of their financials. And she also mentioned that it is a mindset change, and it's a lot of anxiety involved because you don't want to look back and think, especially when it comes to pricing, you don't want to look back and think, oh my goodness, I could have made so much more money and I didn't. The truth is that you did your best with the knowledge you had at that time, but there's no reason now that you have, this new information not to move forward. Do you think so, Danielle?
Yeah, I agree. I love Ruth King. She's a good friend of mine, actually. She was the founder of Women in HVACR, the association that I've been with and been on the board and was a president of as well. And so Ruth King is a wealth of knowledge. I definitely encourage everybody, if you haven't seen that episode, be sure and go back and watch it.
Absolutely. And speaking of, anxieties and fear of mistakes, what do you think is the number one mistake people make when they approach pricing? What is something that when you see, you're not surprised, but you're still like, oh goodness, what is something like that, the easy pitfall?
Yeah, well, one thing is our greatest asset is our ability to test. And so oftentimes we see that people don't test their pricing. They feel like it's this huge thing. I either change or I don't change, and they get stuck in what they say, paralysis by analysis. Like, oh, I can't move, not sure what to do. But let's just test. Let's test this price point and then see what the market will bear. Because oftentimes people will call their competitors and say, oh, well, I'm price checking my competitors and my competitors are priced this way. I need to be priced that way too. Well, no, not necessarily. Your business has its own overhead and its own costs that might be very different than your competitors. And your customer base might be different than your competitor. You might work really well in a certain area or neighborhood or with certain services and products. And so it's not always a comparison. So we see that it's important to build value in what it is that you're offering and test to see what your market will bear. So test this price point, test this price point. And then once you start watching, it's really important to track your numbers. Even if you just go back, perhaps you can use Commusoft to do that. Or maybe, you can just go back and use a little spreadsheet if you have to. But track your numbers and say, all right, we tested this price point on these calls and all these customers took it with no resistance. Okay, maybe we need to go up a little bit. Or we've used this price on this service and nobody took the option. Okay, we need to come down a little bit. It's not difficult to even just spot check every once in a while. And that's something that we see. We see people getting kind of paralyzed by just overthinking it and not testing.
Yes, absolutely, Danielle. And it's really interesting because fear of change is normal. But we are leaders, we're talking about leaders, business owners, business managers, people who need to set an example. And there comes a point in time when one has to get over the fear of change. And we've had customers who really thrived after the pandemic because it did force them out of their comfort zone. And definitely another comfort zone, speaking of comfort zones, yeah, you mentioned it, you touched on it a little bit with when it comes to customers and their budgets, we have a hard time accepting the fact that they might not have the budget we think they have. So how do you feel about pricing and putting yourself in the customer's shoes? Do you have any recommendations for managers or owners who struggle with that? Because sometimes we really are, exactly, we're paralyzed by our own point of view, and trying to see somebody else's perspective can be really difficult.
There's kind of two thoughts, really, of put yourself in somebody else's shoes and walk a mile where they walk so that you can better understand them and have empathy and relate with your customer. But oftentimes we project too much of ourselves, right? And so that's where I caution, because we can try to put ourselves in their shoes and consider their perspective, but we still might not be able to have the full empathy and understand where they're at. And so questioning, asking questions, finding exactly, listening, I think is really important instead of just trying to mentally put ourselves in their shoes, because I believe that we just project too much of ourselves in our own situations, our own budget of, hey, I have this bill that I need to pay, and so I don't have any money this week, for example. It's like an easy projection to subconsciously put on your customers and say, oh, well, they probably can't afford that either. But again, we don't know. So instead, presenting options and asking questions to find what's valuable to them. I just see it as two roads, Christina, that, it's good to walk on their shoes, but at the same time, be very careful not to project your own circumstances onto them. Or maybe, for example, to flip that over, maybe your circumstances are really, really great right now. Maybe you just won, the lottery, or maybe just business is good. Let's just say you've been working really hard and building and growing your business, that things are going really well. And so it's easy to project and think that everybody around us is doing really well, and they might not be. They might be struggling right now. And so asking questions and communicating and listening, I believe, needs to be inserted in that scenario too.
Add to that, add recording data and making sure that you keep information about your customers secure, and you're able to access it. It's the same when you mentioned that you need to measure the results of the strategies you've implemented in order to be able to tell, is this working or is it not working? Am I wasting my time here? If you cannot measure it, you cannot implement it properly. And I think that's a good lesson for any sort of business. And definitely when it comes to customers, it's, you obviously have a good idea. You might have lived in that neighborhood, or it could be, you work in a city that you've lived in your whole life. You have a good idea, of the kind of customers you're dealing with. But at the same time, if you don't keep historical data, it's really, really difficult to aggregate and actually realize, maybe you think you're serving, I don't know, homeowners between the ages of 45 and 55. They're all male. They're all, maybe close to retirement, etc. You have this image in your head, but that can change. Neighborhoods can change. You suddenly start having younger customers who are used to a different sort of experience. They're used to Uber, they're used to Amazon, they're used to all these kind of companies that anticipate their needs. So absolutely agree. It's really important to discuss these things with customers. And at one point, you can have your software, you can have your database, you can have all this information, but there comes a point where the only option is to sit down with your customer, pick up the phone, ask them for a cup of coffee. If you've done a big job for them, I'm sure they'll be fine with it. Just have a conversation, see what are their anxieties, what are their worries, what are their plans for the future, and then how can your business help? Or at least this is what we've seen working with customers. This is not something that I made up on the spot. It is just something that we ourselves implement, and we've seen Commusoft customers implement. But speaking of advice, you're the expert here. What would you tell a business owner who wants to make the transition from, setting prices or quoting based on gut feeling to actually having a strategy? How can they sell better in the future and thrive and grow their business? What are your key tips for 2021?
I've seen a lot of business owners that kind of hold the key to their castle by controlling the pricing. And as they grow, they get busier and busier because their team is always calling the boss, hey, this is the opportunity. How much should I charge for this? And then the boss is saying, hey, give this price. And then the next team member calls, hey, here's another opportunity. How much should I charge for this? And as you can see, Christina, you can only take so many calls by managing your own price book or your own company pricing. It's very difficult to scale and to grow and to expand to get more team members. So I see some people doing that. And then also they might have created their own price book and spent hours and hours tediously over weekends creating these prices. And of course, maybe their team members can utilize those prices. But right now, material increases all over the place. Everybody knows there's shortages, there's material increases, equipment increases. Prices are changing so much overnight. And to go back and to cumbersomely try to change and update all your prices, it's a lot of work, right? And so for 2021, looking at all the changes that we're seeing in the industry, choosing a pricing system that does it for you, that automatically with a click of a button can change your prices so that you don't have to be worrying and stressing about that, and so that you can stabilize and grow your business from a position of strength so that everything is uniform and consistent within your company. That's really important. And so for 2021, that would be a great stepping stone to get your prices uniform based off of a system that can support them and do that part of the work for you. I appreciate the opportunity to answer that question. I don't want to miss out too, though, on just commenting when you said grab a cup of coffee and sit down with your customers. When's the last time that we all did that, right? And asking them, how can I serve you better in the future? Just by asking, I'm sure all of us would be surprised at the incredible feedback that we received, right? And ideas that come back because we get stuck having tunnel vision, viewing our business in a certain way, and our customers might have a completely different perspective. So taking that cup of coffee moment with a key customer is brilliant.
Yes, totally. And, we always get overwhelmed by the way, how fast things move. But again, it comes with being a leader. So, there's some things you can keep complaining about, or you can get up and do something about it. Yep. And is there anything else you'd like to add, Danielle, about what we've chatted about today?
Well, here in the United States, a big problem that we're having right now is hiring. Everybody says, we can't find anybody, we can't find employees. It's so difficult to hire people right now. And my question back to business owner is, well, who is the directly responsible person? Who's the DRP? Who's in charge of hiring? And they'll kind of stutter step and say, well, exactly. Things don't happen if we don't say, hey, you are responsible. Take this project and move it forward, whether it's with pricing, whether it's with software, whether it's with hiring, whether it's with new product implementation, whatever it is. I just like to leave you with that before the year's end. We still have just about half a year left, and what a difference 2021 could be for your business if you make sure to take a look at the things going on in your business and find the pain points and name a directly responsible person over those pain points to fix it before the year end. That could make a difference this year.
Delegate. Yes. One of the hardest things to do as a manager or a business owner, delegate, because you feel like it's all everything's got to be about you. So it's difficult to hand over control, but it is for the best. And there you have it, folks. We've had Danielle Putnam from the new flat rate, thenewflatrate.com. You're going to find the link down below in the description box. We've talked today about how important it is to stay flexible, make sure your strategies can handle any challenges the world throws at you. We've talked about how important it is to consider pricing from a different point of view, to put yourself in the customer's shoes, communicate with them, buy them a cup of coffee, get their insights. Those are going to be so precious. And finally, make sure that you assign the right job to the right person, to your DRP, your directly responsible person. Do I have that right, Danielle?
You do. That was excellent.
Perfect. I'm really glad. As always, this is advice that you can walk away and implement right now because there's no better time. I'm Christina. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you guys next time. Is there anything you'd like to say as a goodbye, Danielle, to our audience?
You've been such a great host. Thanks for having me, Christina. And thank you, everybody, for listening in.
If you want more useful advice like this, make sure to watch our previous episodes, especially Danielle's favorite, Bruce King, the HVAC financial expert. And as ever, you can find us online just by Googling Commusoft, or feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss out on a new episode. I'm Christina, Marketing Executive at Commusoft, and it's been a pleasure today. See you next time. Goodbye.